Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hopefully you're having a nice week. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you are tuning in. We had Indiana basketball last night. We got a Colts game on Sunday. Anthony Richardson back in action. Top 10 Tuesday, as we do every Tuesday here on the Real Jonathan Smith Show. Got some NBA thoughts as well. Just a lot of stuff to get to today, but I want to start with the events that transpired last night between 6:30 and 8:30. Indiana playing host to Minnesota. And, you know, Mike Woodson booed not all that long ago. People calling for his job after losing back-to-back games in the Bahamas. And last night, the Indiana Hoosiers were favored by 9.5. And they went out and they covered the spread. They played a bad Minnesota team and beat them by double digits. That's what good teams do. They beat bad teams handily. That's what we've been saying all year about Indiana football, right? They're good because they're beating bad teams badly. This Indiana basketball team is good. They are a good team. Mike Woodson has done a good job so far this year because they're 8-2 and they didn't lose to Minnesota. And guess what? Friday night, another opportunity to beat a team that Indiana is more talented than. Sure, they lost a couple games in the Bahamas. So what? Who cares? UConn went to Maui, and guess what? They lost 3 in a row. Newsflash, they're still good. Just like how Indiana is still a good basketball team, despite losing 2 games outside of the upper 48. And last night, at home, at Assembly Hall, they once again looked like a good basketball team that is more than capable of winning a lot of games in the Big Ten. Malik Reneau played awesome. Loved the way that he played. Okay, like it was the perfect Malik Reneau game. Okay, like a lot of catch and, you know, going up over the right shoulder and making these left-handed hook shots. He finished really well around the rim. I thought that the interior passing between him and Omar Ballo looked good. Malik Reneau pulled down 7 rebounds. That was tied for the team lead last night. He had 4 assists. It was just a very complete game from Malik Reneau, which it should be. He was arguably Indiana's best player last year. It was him or Khalil Ware, right? And now with Khalil Ware out of the way, Malik Reneau should be even better. And he was awesome last night. He was the best player for the Hoosiers with the way that he rebounded, the way that he passed, and the way that he finished. He was 7 of 10 from the floor. He was really good. Omar Ballo, number 1 transfer in the country, played well too. He played hard last night. That's, you know, impressive. Diving on the floor for loose balls, right? Like that's something important. He grabbed 7 rebounds. He led the Hoosiers in scoring with 18. He didn't miss a shot from the floor. He was 5 for 5. And more importantly, he made his free throws, 8 of 11. And then defensively, he defended the rim without fouling. He and Malik Reneau are why the Hoosiers dominated on the interior last night with 42 paint points. Okay. Mbako, the other forward, the other front court player, I thought he played well too. Not his best game, but he was effective. He scored 13 points, was 5 of 12 from the floor. He had a 3. That was cool. It wasn't a performance to remember, but I didn't think he was bad. He didn't, you know, perform like he's the best player on this team. And I think that he is. Like when you look at just the guys on the floor for the Hoosiers, Mackenzie Mbako will play in the NBA because he's 6'8". He's really long. He's decently athletic and he can shoot the ball. Okay. So was he great? No, but was he bad? He wasn't bad either. Bad. That's honestly a compliment for how Trey Galloway and Miles Rice played last night. They were awful. Trey Galloway and Miles Rice, the 2 starting guards for Indiana, combined for 3 points. They were 1 of 5 shooting. They were 1 of 4 from the free throw line. They had 7 assists and 5 turnovers combined between the 2 of them. Look, I'm not a genius. There are a lot of people out there in the world that are smarter than I am. There just are. But you have to get more from your star transfer in Miles Rice and your 5th-year senior in Trey Galloway. Indiana won by 15, yes. But there were a lot of things that didn't go well. Okay? They turned the ball over 14 times. Half of those turnovers, or I guess not half of them, over a third of those turnovers coming from their two starting guards. They didn't shoot the ball very well, which is the biggest issue that they have. Once again, they only shot 4 of 14 from three. That's only 29%. They didn't make their free throws, 18 of 29. That's 62%. Their best free throw shooter was Omar Ballo, who was 8 of 11 from the line. That should never be the case. Should never be the case. As a guard, you should be offended when your center shoots better from the free throw line than you do. Indiana has to figure out how to shoot the basketball. You can get away with shooting 29% from three when you're playing Minnesota, who's not very good. You can get away with shooting 29% from three when your opponent only shoots 18% from three. It was just an abysmal shooting game. It just was. Okay? It was bad. Indiana has to figure out how to shoot the ball because teams like Nebraska, Indiana's opponent Friday night, I'm just going to tell you right now, they aren't going to shoot that poorly from three. When Indiana plays Purdue, guess what? They aren't going to shoot that poorly from three. It's just not going to happen. Okay, players like Luke Goody, a guy that Mike Whitson went out with the intent of adding shooting, a guy who shot over 40% from three at Illinois last year. Mike Whitson went out and got that guy so he could come in and make some threes. He didn't make any last night. Mackenzie Mbako is a capable shooter. He didn't make his threes last night. Trey Galloway is a capable shooter. He didn't shoot it very well last night. Miles Rice, he's a capable shooter. He didn't make his threes last night. I mean, it's bad. Like, this team has got to find a way to shoot the ball better from three, or we're in for the exact same experience that we had last year. Indiana, with a talented team, but the lack of outside shooting caps success at just short of an NCAA tournament bid. Okay, like you've got to shoot the ball better. And what's really impressive, if you want like the glass half full, happy-go-lucky take, they didn't shoot the ball well. They didn't make threes or free throws, and they still scored 82 points against a Big Ten team. That's impressive. Okay, but if they can find a way to get some production from Miles Rice and Trey Galloway, they could be great. Like this Indiana team has like top 15 team in the country potential. If they can just get their guards to show up and play well, and if they can just halfway decently shoot the ball from three, because their front court talent, they got plenty of it. Between Ballo and Renew and Mbako, and I don't know if Luke Goody's a forward or a guard either way. Like, he's got some size to him. He can shoot it and stretch the floor and do all those things. And like this team should be really good. Kanan Carlisle last night was really good off the bench. Okay. But the player I was most impressed with, not the player who played the best, was probably Malik Renew, but the player that I was most impressed with was Bryson Tucker off the bench. That dude was awesome last night. There are some nights where I'll sit down and I'll watch basketball, and it's very rarely a star because I just kind of expect for stars to play well. But there'll be nights where I'm watching basketball and like Christian Brown on the Nuggets, or TJ McConnell for the Pacers, or Ben Shepherd for the Pacers is probably a better example, or somebody like that, a real role player. They'll just have a night where they're awesome, and I can't take my eyes off of them. That was Bryson Tucker off the bench last night for the Hoosiers. He put up a season high last night with 16 points. He played really well, which is impressive considering he didn't play well against Miami of Ohio. He played 16 minutes, and he put up a goose egg. Then, in his Big Ten debut, biggest game of his life, he was great. 20 minutes. He had 16 points on 60% shooting. He also had 6 rebounds. And the most impressive part, the thing that makes me smile and brings me joy, he wasn't the primary ball handler. That's impressive to me because Bryson Tucker has probably been the best player on every team he's ever played on. And he probably had the ball in his hands all the time whenever he wanted it, and they asked him to do everything. And then he shows up at Indiana, and they're like, no, you're not going to have the ball. We're going to give the ball to Malik Reneau and Mackenzie Mbako and Trey Galloway and Miles Rice. Figure it out. Figure out how to play without the ball in your hands. And he comes out in his first Big Ten game, and he does exactly that. To score 16 points as a freshman, primarily playing off the ball, is impressive. It's even more impressive when you factor in the fact that he didn't make a three. It's not like he hit 3 threes. No, he's scoring off of cutting to the rim and, curling off of screens. And it was just really impressive. It was fun to watch. There are so many freshmen across college basketball that are clueless when it comes to playing off the ball. And then you get this kid in Bryson Tucker who was, cutting to the rim. He grabbed a couple offensive rebounds. Okay, 4 of his 6 field goals came off of assists from his teammates. Okay, when he got to the rim, he got fouled a couple times. I was just very impressed with him. Okay, he was smart with the ball. He kept it moving. It didn't really stick in his hands. He only had 1 turnover. If he keeps playing like that, he's going to have a great year, and he'll play more than 20 minutes a night. Might even have a chance at Big Ten Freshman of the Year. I was really impressed with him, and as I was watching him, I was like, geez, I wish Jarris Walker would do all the things that Bryson Tucker is doing for Indiana tonight. I wish that Jarris Walker would cut to the rim more. I wish that he would just be more active off the ball as opposed to just posting up at the three-point line, but that's kind of the NBA model, so I don't know. Anyway, Bryson Tucker last night, incredible. So much fun to watch. I love seeing freshmen figure things out, and watching him move without the ball and score by cutting was awesome. It was really, really fun to see. Miles Rice, on the other hand, has not been fun to watch. He's been bad to a point where Miles Rice just may not be a Big Ten player. Now, look, it's early. Indiana's only played 10 games, but I just haven't been very impressed with Miles Rice. I'm like, why is he so loose with the basketball? He lost his dribble multiple times last night. He'd be going up into his shot, and he would lose the basketball. Big Ten point guards just don't do that. I never see Braden Smith, just casually bring the ball up the floor and lose it, like I saw Miles Rice do last night. I never see Braden Smith, put a move on somebody, step back, go up into his jumper, and lose the basketball. I don't see him do that, and I saw Miles Rice do that last night. Okay, when you look at Miles Rice and you look at his per game averages, they appear to be fine. That's just because he's been good against bad teams. Indiana has played 5 games against legitimate basketball teams, like not UNC Greensboro, not SIUE, not Eastern Illinois, legitimate teams. We're talking about Providence, South Carolina, Gonzaga, Minnesota, Louisville. Those are the 5. In those 5 games against legitimate competition, Miles Rice is averaging 7 points. 23 of those points, by the way, came against a bad South Carolina team. He's only shooting 28% from the floor in those 5 games against legitimate opponents. To be fair to him, though, he's shooting 40% from 3 in those games. That's good. He's averaging 3 rebounds in those games, 3 assists, and 2 turnovers. That's not good. That's not good basketball. It's just not. And if Indiana wants to win the Big Ten, or if they want to make a run in March, he's got to figure it out. If they want to make the tournament, he's got to figure it out. You have to have good guard play. It is a requirement in college basketball today. Okay, so either he's got to figure it out or Trey Galloway has to figure it out. But let's be honest here about Trey Galloway. It's his 5th year playing basketball at Indiana. And he's only averaged double-digit points once in his 5-year career. That was the sophomore year when he averaged 11 points. Every other year he's played, he's averaged no more than 8 points a game. That guy is not going to figure it out. If you think Trey Galloway is just going to magically morph into some just incredible point guard who's going to lead the way for Indiana and lead them on a run, that is not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It would be absolutely stunning. Okay, he's been here for 4 years. He's shown us what he is. He's a guy who can occasionally get hot and score 20-plus points against Kansas like he did last year. But for the most part, he is an underwhelming basketball player who doesn't defend great, doesn't really shoot great, but from time to time, he'll go crazy. From time to time, he'll do just enough for you to be like, oh, Is this the year that Trey Galloway finally gets it going? And the answer is no, because it's never going to be the year that Trey Galloway finally gets it going. He's an underwhelming, underachieving basketball player who is going to look back at his career in Indiana and be like, geez, I could have been so much better than I was. That is who Trey Galloway is. I have no hope for him whatsoever in him figuring out how to be an impactful basketball player. Okay, so Miles Rice has to be the guy. He's got to figure it out. If Indiana wants to be a top 15 team in the country, if Indiana wants to beat Purdue, Miles Rice has to figure it out, because as good as this front line is, you have to have good guard play. And one thing that has been apparent through these first 10 games is that when Indiana plays good teams, their guard play sucks. No way around it. Speaking of sucking, Anthony Richardson sucked to start the year. He wasn't very good. Wasn't very good last year. And I'll never forget watching that preseason game between the Colts and the Broncos and hearing people talk about Bo Nix versus Anthony Richardson. I've got my thoughts on Anthony Richardson and Bo Nix now that we're 13 games into the season. I'm going to give you my thoughts on them when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Often imitated, never duplicated. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Tickets, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you've had a nice week. I know I have. Just having an absolute blast. Okay, I've got a great job. And part of what makes it so great is, this YouTube page that we have. Indy Sports Ticket. Head over there, subscribe, watch the live stream, because if you watch the live stream, you can ask questions and do those things. During the break, Otter Creek chimed in, and he asked if I'd rather have Anthony Richardson or Bo Nix. Like, if I was the Colts, would I make a trade for Bo Nix? And I was like, that's the perfect question, because I'm actually about to talk about that. Now, Anthony Richardson and Bo Nix, coming out of college, were completely different prospects. Like, they were on the two opposite sides of the spectrum. When you looked at Bo Nix, you knew exactly what you were going to get. Solid NFL quarterback. Okay, a guy who had played a ton of college football. Okay, 61 starts at the college level. That is a college football record that will likely never be broken. Okay, when he was in college, he played for, really good coaches at Oregon, and because of that, he put up numbers, and we're seeing the exact same thing in the NFL, right? He's playing for one of the best coaches in the NFL, a guy in Sean Payton, who's won a Super Bowl. Okay, and since he's playing for that guy, and he's got some decent weapons, and he's got a good offensive line, and he's got one of the best defenses in the NFL on his team, he looks even better, right? Like that's who he is. Like, he came in, and it's like, yeah, like, what you see is kind of what you get. He's probably not going to improve very much because he's 24 years old. But, he looks like he could be a good, solid NFL quarterback, and that's what he's been so far. And then you have Anthony Richardson, the total opposite. Anthony Richardson was just this incredibly raw prospect, a ton of upside, a lot of ifs, right? If he makes good decisions, he could be really good. If he develops his accuracy as a passer, he could be really good. If he stays healthy, then he could be really good. If. That was Anthony Richardson coming out of Florida. A lot of ifs. Meanwhile, Bo Nix was a lot of absolutes. Like, he absolutely is accurate. He absolutely is athletic enough to extend plays, but he's not going to, wow you with his athleticism. And looking at these two different quarterbacks, drafting Bo Nix or a guy like Bo Nix is like investing in a stock that is going to always be solid. Okay? It's like investing in a stock that's never going to just skyrocket straight up. It's like investing in a stock that you also know will never skyrocket straight down. Okay? It's like investing in Amazon, right? Like, it's always going to be solid. The chances of it plummeting are slim. Drafting Anthony Richardson, however, was like investing in a short squeeze stock. Do you remember the GameStop thing that happened a few years ago? A whole bunch of people bought it. It spiked. People sold it really quickly, and they got rich really fast. That is what drafting Anthony Richardson is like. It is way more risky. It is. Bo Nix is the safe option, while Anthony Richardson was the risky option. Every person has their preference. Okay, Bo Nix developed a ton in college, while Anthony Richardson didn't. Bo Nix was drafted based on his production in college and what people absolutely knew about him, while Anthony Richardson was based on his potential and his tools. Now, both of these players, both of these two different quarterback archetypes, have now played 13 or started 13 games in the NFL. And given their draft profiles, things are going as expected. Bo Nix has a better completion percentage than Anthony Richardson. He has thrown for more yards than Anthony Richardson. He has thrown more touchdown passes than Anthony Richardson. And they've both thrown 10 interceptions. Anthony Richardson, on the other hand, due to the tools, due to the athleticism, he's been sacked less. Due to the better arm that he has, his yards per attempt is higher. He's ran for more yards. He's ran for more touchdowns. And he has more game-winning drives than Bo Nix. Now, I am someone who's about being the best. Like, if you aren't the best at something, like, what's the point Like I'll never really understand that. Okay, I like Bo Nix. I think Bo Nix is a good, solid quarterback. I think Bo Nix is going to play in the NFL for 10 years. But he's never going to be Mahomes. He's never going to be Josh Allen. He's never going to be Joe Burrow. He's not. He's going to be good. He'll be like a top 10-ish quarterback for probably his entire career after this year. We're never going to view Bo Nix as a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. Bo Nix is a slightly more athletic Brock Purdy with a slightly better arm. He can win you some games, a lot of games. He can get you to the playoffs. It looks like the Broncos are going to make the playoffs this year in his rookie season. But everything around him has to be in place. The Broncos have one of the better defenses in the NFL. They're actually second in the NFL in points allowed per game. Okay? The Broncos have a guy in Courtland Sutton who's a legitimate number 1 wide receiver. If Courtland Sutton played for the Colts, he would be the best receiver on this roster. The Broncos run the ball well. They got a few different running backs who can get it done. They have a good offensive line. Bo Nix is going to make the playoffs. He may even win a playoff game this year. And if that happens, people are going to go crazy for Bo Nix. But he's not going to win you a Super Bowl. He's just not that level of quarterback, and I don't think he has the potential to get to that point. And then you take Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson, on the other hand, as of today, he is not as good as Bo Nix. Do not mishear me. Bo Nix and Anthony Richardson today, Bo Nix is better. Not a doubt in my mind about it. Okay? But he's getting better. And if we one day looked up and we're like, oh, wow, Anthony Richardson's one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the NFL, it wouldn't be surprising because guys like Tony Dungy have said that he can be that good. Okay? Like Anthony Richardson checks all of the boxes of potential elite quarterback. Big, strong, fast, athletic, huge arm, all those things. And yesterday, Shane Steichen was asked about Anthony Richardson and his development. Okay, Anthony Richardson started 13 games in college. He's now started 13 games in the NFL. And people are curious. Shane Steichen, what improvements have you seen from Anthony Richardson through the first 13 games of his career?
Yeah, I've seen great growth in a lot of phases. His pocket presence has been really strong the last couple of weeks. He's delivering the ball where it needs to go. He's making a ton of plays with his legs, which is great. And we just got to continue that, these next, 4 weeks for sure.
Shane Steichen right there talking about Anthony Richardson and the growth that he has shown. And look, like we've seen it, right? Like they're 2-1 in their last 3 games, right? He's led 2 game-winning drives. He had the game against the Jets where he completed 2/3 of his passes and he ran the ball well. And he was really the only offense that the Colts had, and the Colts were able to win that game. Like we've seen him improve. And part of why he's been better since the benching, part of why he is seen as this quarterback with top 5 quarterback potential is because of his ability to run the ball. And part of Anthony Richardson's recent success has come from running the ball. Here's Shane Steichen discussing Anthony Richardson and the fact that he's carried the ball more since returning from being benched. He was asked, is this a philosophical thing or is this just a result of how the games have gone?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think, they took away some of that stuff early. But again, we have, maybe more design runs than we did before where he's truly keeping it. So I would say that's true, Bob. But also, obviously, we're trying to, see what the defense does, whether he, which will dictate whether he keeps it or not. But obviously, he's been carrying the ball more for sure.
Shane Steichen right there talking about Anthony Richardson carrying the ball more, right? And that's part of why the Colts have been better. As of right now, today, I think everyone would take Bo Nix. Everyone would say, who's better right now, Bo Nix or Anthony Richardson? The answer is Bo Nix. Once again, do not mishear me. I am not making a case for why Anthony Richardson is better than Bo Nix. As of right now, as of today, Bo Nix is better than Anthony Richardson. What about 5 years from now? There's a decent chance that is not the case. Okay? The Broncos going and getting Bo Nix showed a lack of patience. Sean Payton's there. He wants to win games as soon as possible. Give me the young because he's, my age. Give me the quarterback that's played a ton of games in college, who's going to be able to step in and understand things rather quickly, right? Like, look, after the first 2 or 3 weeks of the season, Bo Nix has been really good. Okay? And he should be. He's the more developed quarterback. He started 61 games in college. That's a record. Okay? And this is just something that needs to be kept in mind when you watch this game on Sunday. Bo Nix is better right now because that's what the Broncos wanted. They wanted a quarterback who would be good right now. That is not what the Colts opted for. The Colts opted for a quarterback who's a bit more of a project, who has a higher ceiling. And we're about to watch this game on Sunday. We're going to watch Bo Nix, once again, the more developed quarterback, who once again started 61 games in college, a record. We're going to watch him play against a bad Colts defense behind a better offensive line than the Colts have, while he's throwing to better receivers than the Colts have on Sunday. So we're going to watch him in a pretty good situation for a quarterback. And then we're going to watch Anthony Richardson take the field. A guy who between his college and NFL career has less than half the number of starts that Bo Nix does. 26 games combined. He started 26 games in his college and NFL career. That's not very many. And we're going to watch him play against one of the best defenses in the NFL. Broncos are second in the NFL in points allowed per game. And we're going to watch him take on this defense behind an average at best offensive line with weapons that aren't as good as what Bo Nix has. And chances are Bo Nix is going to outplay Anthony Richardson on Sunday. Okay? And he should, right? Play more games. He's more developed. He's 3 years older. Okay? He's in a better situation. I like Shane Steichen, but he's not Sean Payton. Sorry. But that may not always be the case. And that's why the Colts took Anthony Richardson. So when you ask yourself, or when you get upset on Sunday when Bo Nix plays well and Anthony Richardson potentially doesn't, I don't know what he's going to do. Just remember that the Colts going and getting Anthony Richardson was never about the early process. It was about give this guy a couple of years, not just 13 starts, to see what he can become. Because his ceiling is much higher than a guy like Bo Nix. I want to briefly talk here about the Pacers, and then we'll get back to more NFL stuff at about 10:40 or so. And then I've got Zach Hicks coming on at 11. We're going to talk Bo Nix and Richardson and just about the Colts as a whole as we get ready for that game on Sunday. But I was thinking last night as I was watching, Indiana basketball, and I had some NBA games going on as well. I was thinking about what do good NBA teams do? Like what are the foundational things that good NBA teams do? And do the Pacers do those things? First and foremost, good NBA teams play defense. Pacers do not do that. They are 24th in defensive rating this year. That is absolutely abysmal. And it's a large part of why the Pacers aren't very good at basketball this year. They simply do not play enough defense to win games. It's why they're 10-15 on the season. Okay, what else do good NBA teams do? Not even just good NBA teams, just good teams in general. Oh, that's right. They rebound the basketball. Yeah, the Pacers don't do that. The Pacers are 29th in rebounds per game this year. They do not rebound well at all. And part of that is because their defense is so bad that they don't have a chance to grab rebounds. But still, they don't rebound very well. What else they do is they, good NBA teams also don't turn the basketball over. And the Pacers do that a ton. They're 19th in the NBA in turnovers per game. That is way too many. And then, what else do good NBA teams do? They take and make a lot of threes because 3 is worth more than 2. And, I know that upsets some people. For some reason, we want to see big guys post up and the other 4 guys just stand and watch. That's no fun. I like the movement and the freedom of movement in the NBA today, but hey, I guess that's just me. But good NBA teams take and make a lot of threes. The Pacers don't do that. They're 27th in three-point attempts per game. They are 19th in three-pointers made per game. And they're 11th in three-point shooting percentage. That tells me that they should probably take more threes than what they are currently doing. Okay? And then another thing that good NBA teams do is they have their best player play well every night. And Tyrese Halliburton doesn't do that. Like we can talk about Anthony Richardson being up and down. Tyrese Halliburton's been up and down. He's got 30 and 10 one night, and then the next night he's got 7 and 6, and then the next night he's got 20 and 7, and then the next night he's got 10 and 2, and he's too up and down. He's not consistent enough for the Pacers to win games. And because of that, because of all 5 of these things, the Pacers are not good at basketball this year. And they won't be until at least 3 of those 5 things change for the better. Okay, like if they just rebound better, if they stop turning the ball over, and Halliburton starts to play well, they'll win a whole bunch of games. And I know that because they won a lot of games last year despite not taking a ton of threes and despite not playing very good defense. If the Pacers start playing good defense and they stop turning the ball over and they start taking and making more threes, they're going to win a lot more games. It's like just fix 3 of those 5 things, and the Pacers will very quickly begin to look like a playoff team once again. But you can't be bad, as the Pacers are, at those 5 things and expect to win games. You can't. So anyway, once again, Zach Hicks joining me at 11 o'clock. We're going to talk a lot more Colts and things of that nature when we come back here in about 4 minutes. It's Tuesday, which means we're doing Top 10 Tuesday, the 10 best teams in the NFL after Week 14. That list is coming your way here in about 4 minutes.
Welcome back to The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. It's a Tuesday during the NFL season, which means we're doing Top 10 Tuesday, the 10 best teams in the NFL after Week 14. Joining me here in about 18 minutes is the one and only Zach Hicks of Locked On Colts. We're going to get you ready for Colts Broncos coming up on Sunday. Now, let's start at number 10, as we always do. Number 10, I've got the Los Angeles Chargers. They, like a lot of teams in the NFL, had the Chiefs on the ropes Sunday night, but they, like a lot of other teams, couldn't close it out. Okay? And the reason why I dropped them, I had them a little bit higher last week, is because seeing what they looked like without Ladd McConkey, a second-round receiver who's good but not great, was pretty eye-opening as to how bad their weapons are. Like, when Quentin Johnston's your best receiver, like, that's problematic. Okay? Like, I still like this team because I know who they are, right? They're tough, they're physical, and more importantly, they know who they are. Okay? They play good defense. They can beat anyone in the NFL because they don't beat themselves. And they also have one of the 8 best quarterbacks in the NFL in Justin Herbert. That dude is an absolute stud. I don't know if you saw him dealing at the start of the second half, but he was awesome against a really good Chiefs defense. At number 10, I've got the Chargers. Number 9, the Seattle Seahawks. I love this team so much. I love watching this team play, and it's not just because I said that they'd be good before the year started, but they also check the boxes of just things that I like to see in football teams. Okay, they're physical. They run the ball really well. They're tough. They play great defense. And, they're 8-5. And all 5 of their losses came during this 6-game stretch. Okay? And that stretch was when their defensive line, their defense as a whole really, was incredibly banged up. They're now healthy. And the games where they've been mostly healthy up front, they've been really good, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And they should be, given that, Mike McDonald is their head coach. Okay, the best defensive coordinator in the NFL last year. Okay, on their current 4-game win streak, that's right, they haven't lost a game in a month. They're only giving up 15.5 points per game. And then in addition to that, Geno Smith's a good NFL quarterback. Like, that's a guy that you can win with. He's legitimately good, and that's why it looks like they're going to win the NFC West this year. They're sitting at the top at 8-5. They've got leads over everyone, and I think that they hold the tiebreaker against most teams. So Seattle, it's a really good team who looks like they're going to make the playoffs. Number 8, the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're a very complete team. Everyone who questioned Mike Tomlin switching from Justin Fields to Russell Wilson owes him an apology because they are significantly better with Russell Wilson than they are with Justin Fields. They've won a couple of shootouts. Their offense is really simple. It's like, hey, we're going to run Najee Harris at you, and then we're going to throw the ball deep. And we're going to play action and do all of those different things. So, and then you look at their defense, and it's still one of the best units in the NFL. They can beat anyone. Like, they are the king of weird games. Like, if they played the Chiefs, I would love to know what would happen, because that game would just be incredibly weird. Okay, number 7, I've got the Ravens. The Ravens can beat anyone in the NFL, which is why I don't like having them at 7. And they can beat anyone because their offense is so explosive. Okay, the issue is their defense sucks. No other way to put it. Their defense is not good. They struggle against the pass, so it's hard to get off the field on third down. That's why they have the 24th ranked third down defense in the NFL. That has to be better. Okay, like their defense is bad. It has to be better. And that's the thing. Like their defense doesn't have to be great. Like, it just has to be average, and it struggles to be average. That's how bad it is. And that's why they're 8-5. That's why they lose games to teams like the Raiders. Okay? Like, and look, they have the same record now as the Broncos and the Chargers. Like, they may not get the 5 seed. Seriously. Like they could wind up being the 6 or the 7 seed. And look, if you're the 7 seed, then you probably got to go to Buffalo in the first round, which is not fun. I wouldn't want to do that. It sounds terrible. So I'm very intrigued to see where the Ravens wind up, because as I said, they can beat anyone in the NFL, given how explosive they are on offense, but they can also lose to anybody because their defense is so atrocious. Number 6, I've got the Vikings. I've been putting this off for a while now. Sam Darnold's officially off pumpkin watch. That's why I moved them up. I've been really hesitant these past few weeks because I've been waiting on Sam Darnold to turn back into a pumpkin. I've been waiting on him to revert back to the version of himself that bounced around the NFL. You know, the one that went from, New York to Carolina to San Francisco to Minnesota. I think there's another team in there somewhere that I'm missing. But the guy's bounced around because he hasn't been very consistent. But now we're 14 weeks into the season. Midnight struck a long time ago, and Sam Darnold's still balling out of control. I mean, it's really impressive. And when you look at the Vikings, that defense is still good. They have an excellent staff in terms of coaches, and that 11-2 number speaks for itself. Number 5, however, I've got the Green Bay Packers. Packers lost by 3 on the road against the Lions. I know they're 9-4, and I'm sure that there's some people out there, well, if the Vikings are 11-2 and the Packers are 9-4, then why are the Packers in front of the Vikings? The answer is because this is not the college football playoff. These are rankings, not standings. So yes, record matters when I'm doing these rankings, but this list is supposed to reflect the best teams in the NFL, not the best records. The Packers are better than the Vikings. The roster is better. Jordan Love's better than Sam Darnold. Matt LaFleur is every bit as good of a coach as Kevin O'Connell. And the real reason why I have the Packers in front of the Vikings is because their schedule's just been tougher. Okay? The Packers' opponents' win percentage on the year is 56%, while the Vikings' opponents are at 44%. Okay, so the Packers have beaten good teams this year. That is the reality of it, while the Vikings have had a little bit easier of a schedule. Not saying that the Vikings aren't good. I've got them as the 6th best team in the NFL. But the Packers have done it against better teams, so I've got them 5th. Number 4, I've got the Eagles. I had them at number 3 last week, but I've got some concerns. I do. They don't throw the ball. They are a bad passing team. Okay, and I think that we saw it this week when they played the Panthers. They barely beat them. They were 13.5-point favorites. And if Xavier Legette makes a catch, then the Panthers win that game. The Eagles are 31st in the NFL in passing yards per game. They're only throwing for an average of 180 yards per game. That's bad. They aren't throwing the ball for 200 yards a game on average. And they have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith as receivers. So you would think that they'd be able to throw the ball a little bit more effectively than what they have this year. Now, to be fair, part of why the passing numbers are down is because they run the ball so much. They lead the NFL in rushing attempts per game. But you'd think that they'd be better than 31st in passing per game. 31st. The only team worse than them is the New England Patriots. That is my concern with them. What happens if they get down? Or are they going to be able to bounce back and win some? And like if they're down to the Lions, I don't know how they're going to get back in these games because they simply aren't throwing the ball well enough this year. Number 3, I've got the Chiefs. They just continue to find a way to win close games. At some point, though, something has to go wrong. Like at some point, something bad has to happen. Okay, like someone's going to commit a penalty at the wrong time. Okay, someone's going to drop a pass when they don't need to. Patrick Mahomes is going to make a bad decision at some point. Andy Reid's going to call the wrong play. A referee is going to make a bad call. Something is going to go awry for the Chiefs at some point late in the game, but they've just been amazing. The Chiefs are an average football team for the first 50 minutes of every game that they play. They match their opponent's level for the first 50 minutes of every game that they play. Then in the final 10 minutes, something happens. And they're just like, oh, crap, we're playing football and we're the Chiefs. We should maybe behave like it. And then they get every stop that they need and they get every score that they need. It is truly incredible what the Chiefs have done. It's amazing. But at some point, like they're going to run into a team like the Bills, like they did this year, and they're going to lose because hanging in, matching your opponent's level of competition every week just isn't sustainable. At some point, they're going to lose because something isn't going to go their way. Number 2, I've got the Lions. They beat the Packers with defensive players that they signed off the street 3 days prior to the game. That's absurd. Do I need to say anything more? They beat one of the best teams in the NFL with most of their defense out due to injury. This is the advantage of having an elite offense. Your defense can give up 31 and you can still win. Okay, Ben Johnson, play calling wizard, probably going to be a head coach sometime after this year. Would love to see him in Chicago with Caleb Williams. That'd be pretty sick. Jared Goff just continues to not throw incompletions. It's kind of ridiculous. The Lions continue to just run the football at will between, their two awesome running backs. The Lions are incredible. If you wanted to put them at one, I wouldn't be surprised and I wouldn't be upset by it either. But at number one, I have the Bills. It's like, well, Jonathan, they just lost to the Rams. How can you have them at number one? I got to be honest. I don't care that they lost to the Rams. I don't. Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford seem to have these 2 or 3 games every single year where they just put together picture-perfect offense, where Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp are both going crazy. And the Bills just happen to be on the receiving end of that game this year. Josh Allen's still awesome. He scored 6 total touchdowns against the Rams, and they lost. That's absurd. Okay? And you can say, well, Jonathan, that just means that the defense isn't very good. I'm going to chalk that up yesterday to the, Rams just being awesome. No other way really around it. So, they're incredible. Josh Allen's still awesome. Like I said, 6 total touchdowns yesterday or on Sunday against the Rams. Amari Cooper makes them better. Keon Coleman, when he eventually comes back, he's going to make them better. They run the ball well. James Cook, they're kind of winding him down to kind of keep him ready for, the playoffs. The Bills are the best team in the NFL. If I had to place a bet today on who was going to win the Super Bowl, I would place my bet on the Buffalo Bills. That is how good they are. Lurking just outside that top 10, you got teams like the Broncos. The Broncos are kind of like right on the edge. I'm very, very excited for this game on Sunday. Very excited to talk to Zach Hicks about the game. It should be a good one. Like I genuinely cannot wait for it. Other teams that I've got kind of hovering on the edge. The Texans are kind of on the edge of it. I'm not really as big of a believer in them. The Commanders are close, but they haven't beaten the team with the winning record all year, and it's not good. The Buccaneers are close, but I don't know. But yeah, there you go. When we come back here in about 5 minutes or so, Zach Hicks of Locked On Colts, he's going to join the show. We're going to talk Colts. We're going to talk, would you rather have Anthony Richardson or Bo Nix? Why has A.D. Mitchell been so bad this year? All that kind of stuff. So it's going to be really good. Zach Hicks is set to join the show when we come back here in about 5 minutes. Tis the season to be jolly. Ho, ho, how about treating yourself to a clean home this month With Zero Res, you can get 3 rooms of carpet cleaned at just $129, plus take $75 off your air duct cleaning. With all that wet, sloshy mess soaking into your carpet, call the pros at Zero Res because you know it's safe for the whole family and effective at bringing up all that dirt. Call Zero Res today at 317-588-5141 or online at ZeroResIndeed.com.
I'm getting older. Do I need to worry about falling?
Yes, you do. Every
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you guys are having a nice week. Joining me now is Zach Hicks of Locked on Colts. Zach, what's going on, man?
Oh, man, I'm just enjoying life. Didn't have to worry about the Colts this past weekend. No game to really watch either to even talk myself into playoff scenarios. So got a nice little break, before this final stretch of the season.
Nice. So what did you do on Sunday then?
Oh, let's see. I know I went to my brother-in-law's chorus concert. I went out to dinner. I mean, I watched a little bit of the Bills game, but that was about it. I mostly just stayed away from football regardless on Sunday. It was the first time all year, which was nice.
Did you watch the college football playoff show where they revealed the top 14 or top 12 teams and all that? I
did see that. I was pleasantly surprised with maybe it's a hot take here. I was pleasantly surprised that they didn't put Alabama in there. I don't think you should be rewarded for 3 losses regardless of the conference you play. I'm glad they put in, teams that actually went to their playoff game or teams that were clearly better than Bama. So I did watch that. I thought it was a cool thing, and I'm excited for the playoff, even though this year it really feels like one good college football team, and that's Oregon. It feels like the rest kind of stink this year, but I'm excited for the playoff regardless.
I am too. I would have put in Bama just because I don't know. Like when I asked the question, can you see this team winning the whole thing? Like for me, the answer with SMU, it's clearly no. Like they played 2 ranked teams this year. They lost both of them. Like Alabama beat Georgia, which tells me that they can beat anybody. And I don't know. Like if we're gonna put teams in, I just feel like it should be teams that we feel like can beat anybody. And I just don't know if SMU can.
I mean, I think that's fair, but also like, what's the point in playing the regular season then with that mindset is kind of my thought process. Like if Bama wanted to be in so bad, maybe score more than 3 points against Oklahoma.
Yeah, fair point.
I think that would be, I think you make a good, like, I mean, they'd be in there and look, maybe it's punishing these conferences for building these super duper conferences and stuff like that. But personally, if you're a team that can't even make it to your conference championship game and you have 3 losses, like, what are we doing here? You're really one of the best 12 teams in I don't care if you're playing in the best conference in football. Like, you can't even make it to that conference championship game and you have 3 losses, including 2 losses to 6-win teams. Like, come on. Like, I think I do think Bama's more talented than some of the teams that got it over them. But, like, there's no point in the regular season, I think, if you put them in. So I'm glad, like, maybe I'm a hater for Bama at this point because you're tired of seeing the same team and stuff. But I do like rewarding teams for, like, look, SMU is not better than Bama probably, but they played their schedule. They played well. I mean, their losses were to BYU and Clemson this year, I believe. And Clemson was, they came back late in that game. BYU, it was early in the season before they found their stride. Like, I don't know. I think SMU deserved it more. So that's kind of my thought process there. But, everyone, it's a cool process because there is more conversation now rather than just 1 versus 2. Like, I like there being a conversation about all these teams because it's such a complex thing that college football is.
It is. Like, there's, like, I used to say that, joined by Zach Hicks of Locked On Colts. I promise we're going to talk about the Colts here at some point.
Yeah.
I used to say, still do. I used to say that the Michael Jordan versus LeBron James argument was like the epitome of like sports talk because it's arguing two different sides in college and who should be in the college football playoff. That is another question that I think fully sums up like what sports talk is. It's debating with your friends about different things, and it's great because if we were really honest, I don't think Alabama or SMU deserves a chance to win the title, but because it's 12 teams, you have to pick one.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the Colts. Obviously, we're going to talk about the Broncos, but I'm just kind of curious, how disappointed are you in the production from A.D. Mitchell this year?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think there is a degree of disappointment with A.D. Mitchell just because, again, when you take a top 50 pick on a player, you want them to be at least a little bit more productive. Or I think he was just outside the top 50, but you want him to be a little bit more productive than what he's been this year. I think has even passed 300 yards receiving this year. I don't think he's even past 300 yards. And part of the limited production is because there's 3 guys ahead of him that are better than him at this moment. I mean, the one guy he really realistically could have pushed in the off season is having his best career season, and that's Alec Pierce. So it was tougher to get on the field, but when he's been on the field, it's been varying degrees of success and production. So I do think there is a little bit of disappointment. I do think we also have to keep in mind, though, that he came into this year at 21 years old. He turned 22 this season, was a guy who really didn't find his footing fully in college. And that's because of, there was injuries in there. There was, lack of development at times. There was jumping around the 2 programs. And again, he's still fairly young. So I don't know if there was a big expectation for him to come in this year and be hyper productive. Like, again, you clearly want more than what he's given, but I think that draft selection of him was more of the long-term approach than the right now approach. So if I had to put anything on it, I would say like you have like slight warning flags with him, but overall, I think he's shown some things. Like he gets open like so easily right now. I think he's got some really good body control. I think there are some reasons to be excited about him going forward. It's just you clearly need to clean up some of these developmental things. So yeah, probably as like a 2nd round pick, you're probably a bit disappointed, but you take that pick with the long term in mind, and hopefully you can iron out some of these deficiencies and get him ready to go by year 2 and year 3.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. He's at 254 receiving yards on the year, and yeah, hopefully he gets better kind of as he gets older, which should happen. Like I think that we've been what's the word spoiled by like Malik Neighbors showing up and being awesome, Odell Beckham showing up and being awesome, Marvin Harrison Jr. being pretty good in Arizona. Like it's not normal for rookie receivers to show up and be great immediately. Like obviously there's outliers to that, Jefferson, Chase, but for the most part, receivers show up and struggle a little bit. Speaking of struggling, why do the Colts receivers drop so many passes? Do you have any read on why this just keeps happening?
Yeah, I mean, I do think, and this is not even to point it like too much at Anthony Richardson, but I do think the way that Richardson plays quarterback does lead to more drops than say, like let's say a Joe Flacco, right? When Joe Flacco's out there, it felt like guys were making more catches and more plays on the ball. And I do think some of that is due to the fact that, Flacco throws the ball a little bit earlier than Richardson. He's been there, done that. He sees what's coming. He can anticipate a little bit better. So his passes are a little bit more like lofted in there, a little bit easier to catch, where Richardson, it's coming like a bullet at you. This thing is coming a million miles per hour. And that's not to excuse these guys for dropping passes. Like these are NFL players that do need to catch the ball. And there are examples too, like the A.D. Mitchell drop against the Patriots, where it's like, look, that's just one you have to, like that was lofted in there. But I do think there is some of the Anthony Richardson argument in there. I mean, I distinctly remember the Michael Pittman Jr. drop against the Jets, where it was right before halftime. He rifled it over the middle to Michael Pittman Jr. and Pittman should have caught it, but like that ball was coming at like 100 miles per hour. That ball was coming like super fast at him. So it is a little bit tougher a ball to catch, but yeah, I don't know the main reason though why these guys are dropping passes. I see these quarterbacks every week. I mean, I was watching the Bills in Rams this past weekend, and you're watching Puka Nacua just catch everything. I mean, this was not a highly picked guy either. I think he was like a 4th or 5th round pick or whatever he ended up being. And every single ball thrown his way, he's snagging, he's making great plays on it. And it's not like Matthew Stafford throws the ball relatively easy. I mean, he's one of those guys who rifles it in there too. And you're like, man, why can't the Colts just have someone like that? Like a true just ball winner. I think Michael Pittman Jr. for the most part is that. He does struggle sometimes like with the concentration drops, but for the most part, he does win a lot of those. And Alec Pierce has shown some good flashes, and Josh Downs obviously is really good. But when you're looking at A.D. Mitchell, when you're looking at this entire tight end room, when you're looking at this running back room, they don't really have many ball winners there. Ashton Doolin, I think, too, as well, will fall into that. So it's kind of like, you're throwing the ball at those top 3 guys, and most of the time they're catching it. But the other guys on the roster, you just don't know what's coming. And part of it is like, how many good weapons can you really have on an NFL team? But the other part of it's like, some of these guys really need to make plays. Like Kylan Granson needs to make a play. A.D. Mitchell needs to make that play against the Patriots. Frankly, anyone in the tight end room needs to make a play. So yeah, I don't know the real reason why they're dropping so much. I know it's like Richardson's got this insane drop rate though this year, and I know part of it's him, but like another part of it's like, come on guys, you got to make a play for your quarterback.
Yeah, he's got like the highest drop rate since 2014 or something absurd like that. Joined by Zach Hicks of Lockdown Coaching. Follow him on Twitter at Zach Hicks2 to keep up on everything that he's doing. So, do you remember the freak out after the Broncos played the Colts in the preseason?
Was that did Richardson struggle in that game, or
He
was
did.
it?
He wasn't good, and Bo Nix was like
I thought it was
20 of 22 or something crazy like that.
Wasn't it the Bengals game though that he struggled?
He came out on that first drive and he threw the pick. I just remember after the Broncos game, people being like, the Colts should have waited and drafted Bo Nix, which I disagree with. And look, I fully expect for Bo Nix to play better than Richardson on Sunday. Do you kind of expect the same thing?
Yeah, look, I like Bo Nix. I don't want to talk bad on Bo Nix. Like, I think he was drafted a little bit higher than what I would have taken him, but I still had him as like a late 1st round, early 2nd round type guy. I thought there was something to work with there. And he ended up at the perfect situation with Sean Payton, who can kind of dial up a lot of things that worked for him in Oregon in terms of the quick screen game, in terms of getting the ball out of his hands, in terms of letting him be an athlete with his scrambling ability and his inability to take sacks, basically, which is a really good thing that he has in his game. So he's clicking on a lot of cylinders right now. One thing I will say, though, and this is, again, I think Bo Nix is better than these two guys, and I think he will be better, but I do think people fall into the trap a lot of times with these rookie season quarterbacks who are a bit older prospects who come in and play well that first season, and then they kind of taper out and just kind of show that they, this is kind of who they are. Like, they don't have much development past this. I mean, Bo Nix is 23 years old, about to turn 24. Not to say that's like super old or anything, but he's played a lot of football in his life up to this point. I think he's started the most games in college football history. So him kind of rolling into this first season with an experienced, really good head coach, it makes sense that he's able to find success fairly early. But I do think you fall into the trap of the Mac Jones and the Kenny Pickett type of thing, where those guys looked really good in their first seasons as starters too, or at least really solid in their first seasons, and then they really didn't go anywhere from there. Again, I think Bo Nix is better than those two. I think he's got better traits. I think he's a better athlete than those two guys and just a smarter player. But I do see a little bit of that in terms of an older quarterback coming in, showing that he can run an NFL system, but can he do much more than that? I'm not too sure. So I am with you, though. I do think he's going to, again, it's kind of subjective to say who's going to perform better, so to speak, but I do think he's going to have a good game on Sunday. I mean, he's got the much easier defense that he's going against. He's operating really well in a consistent system right now, where the Colts offense has been very sporadic a lot this season. And Richardson's play has been fairly sporadic as well, where Nix has been mostly consistent. So, yeah, I think Nix will have a better game. I don't think it really changes much on draft strategy or anything like that. I mean, I would still have taken the risk on Richardson, regardless of the outcome of this game or anything else, because I believe in swinging for the fences. I think Bo Nix can be a really solid single or double. I'm not sure he's a swing for the fence type of quarterback pick, but he's played well this year and he's proved a lot of people wrong, so who knows? But I would still rather take that swing on a player like Richardson than a guy like Nix, even if Nix outperforms him here or even outperforms him in his career. Like, I still believe in taking that shot regardless.
Joined by Zach Hicks of Locked On Colts, talking Colts Broncos on Sunday. I'm with you. Like, I would rather do the Richardson thing because I just, the ceiling with Nix is just so much lower. Like, when I watch Bo Nix, I'm like, you know what he is? He's like a slightly more athletic Brock Purdy, which is a good quarterback. But that's a great like peak for him. If you can be like a Brock Purdy his whole career, that's a good NFL career right there. It is, but you probably aren't going to win a Super Bowl or anything. Like, it's just kind of the reality of it. And with Anthony Richardson, like when Tony Dungy comes out and is like, yeah, like if he develops properly, he could be one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the league. Like you have to take that guy. And so I'm with you. I'd rather have Richardson than Nix. I think Zaire Franklin would as well, because he said, I think it was last week, that Anthony Richardson was the Colts' best player. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. Do you?
Oh man, that Patriots game, guys were struggling. Honestly, maybe in this past game against the Patriots, because nobody stood out on the defense for the Colts. Yeah. On the offense, Taylor had a decent game, but still under 4 yards a carry. I guess Quentin Nelson and Bernhard Raimann were fine at left guard and left tackle, but even with the interceptions, Richardson might have been the best player in that game. He accounted for 3 touchdowns, and played some good football. So, yes, look, Zaire Franklin's a smart guy. I'm sure he fully understands that the Colts kind of stole that game. They were outgained by like 200 yards. They lost the turnover battle. They lost the time possession battle, and they won because their quarterback went down the field on a 19-play drive, scored, and then scored the 2-point conversion where he wouldn't be denied. So, they kind of stole that game, and Anthony Richardson was a big part of it. So if Franklin was just really talking about that Patriots game, I tend to agree with him. I do think Richardson, even with the turnovers, is probably their best player on the field.
The Patriots game for sure. The way that he phrased it, I wish I had the audio. I don't. It sounded like he meant like since the benching, since Anthony Richardson's come back from the benching. Do you think he's been the Colts' best player? That's probably a better way to ask the question.
I think there's a case for it, for sure. Especially when you consider like Quentin Nelson had that really putrid game against the Lions. Josh Downs has been out, or he missed this past game and he missed some of the Lions game. So I do think there's a pretty good case for it. I mean, maybe DeForest Buckner, he's had a couple of good moments in there, but I mean, if you look at why the Colts are 2-1 in their last 3 games, the biggest reason is Anthony Richardson. I mean, regardless of your thoughts on the player or project so far, the biggest reason why the Colts are 2-1 in this past 3 is because of Richardson, because their team has not played well enough to be 2-1 these last 3 games. I mean, they were trailing by a score going into the fourth quarter against the Patriots this past week. They were trailing by 2 scores against the Jets in the fourth quarter. They were obviously getting beat down by the Lions in the fourth quarter, but I mean, Richardson's led 2 fourth quarter comebacks in the last 3 games that has propelled this team to 2 wins they probably didn't deserve over the Jets and the Patriots. So I think there's a good case that since the benching, he's been maybe not like their best player, but their biggest impact player on their team. I mean, he's literally willed this team to victories. Now, we could argue on how they got into those deficits, and he's certainly part of that issue there in the offensive issues. But when the game mattered the most and it came down to the fourth quarter in both of those games, he showed why, the Colts believe in him and why he's that quarterback. So, yeah, I think there's a good case to be made that he has been their best player since the benching, and hopefully that continues during this final month because, I mean, they need to win all 4 of these games to make the playoffs, and for them to do that, he's going to have to be a big part of that.
He is joined by Zach Hicks, host of Locked On Colts, talking Colts and Broncos. Okay, just what do you think their chances are of winning out? If Anthony Richardson plays at the same level, right, where he's completing like 55% of his passes, still running the ball well, because obviously if he comes out and he has a stinker, then the Colts probably won't win out. But what do you think their chances are?
Man, it really comes down to this game. I'm not saying that the Titans and the Jaguars and the Giants are like super easy games for this team. I mean, heck, they beat the Jets and the Patriots by like 3 total points. Like, this is not this is not a team that is like 100% a lock to beat those bottom feeder teams. But you ultimately feel better about those games. But this is a playoff game this weekend. I know they're not a lock for the playoffs if they win, but you have a pretty good chance. You'd be 1 game back from the Broncos, and you'd have the tiebreaker over them. You'd have the tiebreaker over any 3-way tie in the AFC, and the Broncos play the Chargers and the Chiefs down the stretch. Like, you'd have a really good chance at making the playoffs. So it really comes down to this game. And again, like, this Colts team this year, they're 5-1 against teams below 500. They're 1-6 against teams above 500. This is their last chance to show that they can actually play with teams above 500. Because they haven't shown it much this season. They beat the Steelers early in the year with Justin Fields starting that game, and they have not beat any other team above 500 this season. So this is ultimately the make or break game when it comes to the playoffs. So if they can get past this test, which I know this is like a no doy type thing that I'm saying, but like if they can get past this Broncos game, then yeah, their chances of winning out are extremely high, in my opinion. I think they'll be able to take care of business and get the 10 wins, but this is ultimately the biggest test. The Broncos are a very, very tough matchup for this team, especially with how inconsistent this team has been. And I'm not sure they can get past this test, but we'll see, man. We'll see what kind of team they are. I know they've kind of let down before this season, and I'm not sure this is a playoff team, but they get their one last big shot at it here to really breathe some life into this season.
What do you think the Colts have their advantages on Sunday?
I think just having a quarterback who can create explosives is a big thing. I mean, the last time we saw the Broncos was against Jameis Winston and the Browns on that. I think it was a Thursday night or a Sunday night game or something like that, primetime game. And Winston carved them up. I mean, he threw 2 pick sixes, obviously, in that game because he's Jameis Winston, but he carved them up for a lot of big plays, explosives, and just the Colts having a quarterback who's capable of creating explosives, who can hit the deep ball, who can use his legs to create explosives, who can be a threat in the red zone. I think that's a big advantage in this matchup against a defense that's been quite suffocating on most teams. So just having a guy who can create out of structure and make things happen is a pretty big advantage. Outside of that, though, man, I mean, I don't know. This Broncos team matches up really well with the Colts. They're a really good run defense, which the Colts want to be a run-first offense in recent weeks. So it kind of hurts a little bit of that. The Colts defense is a terrible matchup for the Broncos offense. They are perfectly fine with screening you to death and getting the ball out quick. And even if they don't get the ball out quick, Nix is one of the best quarterbacks in football at scrambling and not taking sacks, where the Colts defense has struggled to make tackles on quarterbacks in and around the pocket. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they have any other advantage outside of Richardson's big play ability, which, it sucks going into a big playoff game being like, all right, young quarterback who's been benched this season and has had his ups and downs, you have to win us this game. You basically have to win us this game against a better team. But when I look at this matchup in every way, it's like it kind of just needs to be a gigantic Richardson performance for the Colts to win, because I think that's really their only advantage in this game.
Joined by Zach Hicks of Locked On Colts, talking Colts and Broncos. Follow him on Twitter at Zach Hicks too for all the updates on his latest stuff. How big of a deal is the bye week for the Colts, and how frustrating is it that the Broncos also have a bye week this week this week to get ready for the Colts?
It does suck, man, because we've had like 3 or 4 teams have that advantage over the Colts this season in terms of coming off a full bye or a mini bye week going into the Colts game. So the Colts don't even get that advantage that other teams have gotten over them. But yeah, I mean, look, getting that bye week in general is such a big thing for this team. This team was battered. They were losing focus at times. I mean, even their healthy players on the field, Michael Pittman Jr. and Alec Pierce, were dealing with a lot of injuries last week in that Patriots game. I mean, you could see Pierce on that final catch, like, to barely get back up. He was so banged up. So, yeah, I mean, it's good just to get these guys some rest and get some mental reps away from football before they get back at it this week. So I think there is still like an innate advantage to it. I mean, Shane Steichen, I think I saw a stat the other day that in his career as an offensive coordinator, his team's averaged like 37 points per game coming off the bye.
Wow.
And now a lot of that was with the Eagles, who were one of the best offenses in football. But even last year, they were able to score a little bit coming off the bye. I think it was that Tampa game where they came out last year and scored like 28 off the bye against Tampa. So, Shane Steichen's good off the bye. He's got 2 weeks to prepare for a good defense and get things ready. And I think just these guys getting some rest and some mental, relaxation away from the team could have helped them a little bit. But yeah, it does suck they didn't get the other advantage that comes with the bye week, which is you face another team that's going to be tired, where the Broncos are also going to get those same advantages that I just mentioned with for the Colts.
It really does. How healthy do you think the Colts are going to be on Sunday?
They seem to be pretty healthy in general. I mean, even going into the bye week, they seem to be getting relatively healthy. Now, hopefully, the big one will be Josh Downs. If the Colts can get Josh Downs back for this one, that'll be just massive. I mean, Josh Downs is their best playmaker on offense. He's arguably their best player on the team this year. Been a fantastic weapon on offense, even with other guys dropping balls and not being 100% all the time. Downs has been that guy when he's been on the field. So it would be massive to get him back. I mean, and there's other guys too, like Jalen Carlisle. I mean, update on who are the other guys they had on IR? There was another guy on IR too that I was thinking
Ryan
about.
Kelly?
I think Carlisle. Yeah, Ryan Kelly should be back this week as well. So yeah, Ryan Kelly, Jalen Carlisle might be back, and we'll get some updates on them. I know they held out hope on Samson Ebukam early in the season, so we'll see if it would be insane if he were able to come back at all this season, but they did use the IR/DR for him coming into the season to designate to return. So we'll see if there's any update on him. But if they can get Carlisle and Kelly and Downs back coming into this game, along with Michael Pittman Jr. and Alec Pierce getting some rest to clean up some injuries and some other players getting some rest, I mean, they should be a relatively healthy team, almost 100% healthy from what you could say. Oh, Juju Brents was the other player. Juju Brents,
That's right.
We'll get an update on him maybe.
Would love to get him back.
Yeah, it'd be awesome just to get a potential playmaker in the secondary. I mean, Brents has not been perfect since he's been on the Colts, but one thing we can say about him is he's been a playmaker. I mean, he's forced fumbles, he's got interceptions, so maybe just getting him back on the field can get a spark to this defense. That I think they've only forced 1 turnover in the last 3 weeks, and that's really where their struggles have been on the defense in recent weeks. So maybe you can get a guy like him back out there who can force some things to happen.
So if joined by Zach Hicks of Locked On Colts, if Juju Brents comes back, who's the second corner?
Well, I think Womack would still get a majority of the snaps out there with Jalen Jones and Kenny Moore, but I do think they would rotate Brents in a little bit. It would fully depend on, where he is, like, mentally and physically, like if it's more of like a slow build up for him, or if it hey, this guy has been good to go for like 2 weeks. Now we're ready to get him out there. It really depends in a lot of ways for him. So we'll have to see. I mean, Steichen will talk to media here. I'm actually probably pretty soon here today, and probably give some updates when it comes to practice and all those injuries. So we'll just have to see. Like, we still don't even know if Brent is coming back this year, but we should get that update here relatively soon.
Last question for you, and I will let you go. Pretty simple. Do you think they win on Sunday?
I want to be optimistic, man. I really do. But history of this season tells me that they probably won't. I mean, again, they have been bad against good teams this season. It's always one side of the ball that doesn't show up in every single game, it feels like. And they're just not talented enough to win against these good teams when one side of the ball is not showing up. So, look, if the Colts can get a complete performance from the offense and the defense, where at least both sides show up and are competitive, and Shane Steichen does his post-bye week magic here and schemes up some big plays, then yeah, they can certainly win this game. Like, I don't think the talent level between these two teams is insurmountable by any means, but when I look at the Broncos, I see a pretty well-oiled machine that's just kind of playing some good football. Bo Nix is fitting really well in a consistent offensive system. And they're making things happen on both sides of the ball, where the Colts have just been this very inconsistent, kind of sloppy team at times this season. So I'm not sure if they can all of a sudden figure it out post bye week against a team that feels like they have a good process going in the Broncos. So I'm going to say no, they don't beat the Broncos this weekend, but I don't think it's crazy to pick the Colts to win. It's just, look, man, you got to show me something. You got to show me that you're able to win games like this, and they really haven't shown it at all this season. So hopefully I'm proven wrong and they can show it. But either this time next week we'll either be talking about the Colts, essentially being a playoff team, or being in the draft season already. That's basically what this game comes down to here.
I really hope they win. I do not want to talk about the draft. Okay, last thing for real here. What percentage of passes does Anthony Richardson have to complete for you to feel like, yes, the Colts won this game? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the depth of target, obviously. And so like, obviously, if you're throwing like bombs all game, like you can complete like 50% of your passes as long as you're hitting those deep shots. But ideally, you want to see him closer to what he did against the Jets. You want to see 60, 65, maybe even 70% of his passes. I know that's a bit high for him, but when he was really clicking against the Jets and had everything kind of rolling in that game, that's when this Colts offense was probably at the best we've seen it, in the last 2 years. So hopefully it can be around. I mean, if we can hit like 60%, I'd feel pretty good. Even high 50s, I'm usually feeling pretty good about his game, depending on the quantity of throws. But let's get like low 60s this weekend and feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm at. Zach, thanks for your time as always, man.
Yep, you have a good one, buddy.
You too. That is Zach Hicks. Follow him on Twitter at Zach Hicks2. You can check out Locked On Colts wherever you get your podcast. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, Indiana 8-2 picked up a Big Ten win last night against Minnesota. My thoughts on that game when we come back.
The best takes, stories, and entertainment. It's The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket. 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Here on Indy Sports Ticket. Almost said it twice. Jeez, that's just how excited I am to talk a little bit of Indiana basketball, a team that opened Big Ten play last night against Minnesota. A not very good Minnesota team, but hey, we'll take it. A win is a win is a win, baby. And, and more importantly, it's a double-digit win. And look, Indiana's a good team. And, how do I know that? How do I know that Indiana is a good basketball team? Because they played Minnesota last night and they beat them by double digits. Okay, that's what good teams do. They beat bad teams handily. This Indiana team is good. Okay, so no need to boo Mike Woodson. Mike Woodson has done a good job so far this year because I know that because they're 8-2. They lost a couple games in the Bahamas. So what? UConn lost 3 games in a row in Maui. Guess what? UConn's still very good. Just like how Indiana is still a good basketball team despite losing 2 games outside of the upper 48. Last night, once again, they looked like a good team that's going to win a lot of games in the Big Ten. Malik Renew, he played well. He finished around the rim. I thought he was the best player for the Hoosiers last night. I thought the interior passing between him and Ballo was good. He also pulled down 7 rebounds. He had 4 assists. Like, he played a very complete game. And if he plays that well, then Indiana is going to continue to win a lot of games this year. Like, when he got 2 feet in the paint, it was a bucket. Omar Ballo was really good as well. He played hard, got on the floor a couple times to get after some loose balls, grabbed 7 rebounds. He made free throws, led Indiana in scoring with 18. He didn't miss a shot from the floor. Like the dude played well. He defended the rim without fouling. Like, this Indiana basketball team played well last night. Okay, he and Renew are why they dominated the interior with 42 paint points. Mackenzie Mbako was fine. Not his best game. Not his worst game either. Scored 13, but it wasn't a performance to remember by any stretch of the imagination. So while the front court for Indiana was good, the backcourt sucked. The 2 starting guards for Indiana last night, Trey Galloway and Miles Rice, were awful. They combined for 3 points on 1 of 5 shooting. They were 1 of 4 from the line. Free throw line, to be clear there. They had 7 assists and 5 turnovers between the 2 of them. Look, I'm not a genius, but you got to get more from your star transfer and your 5th-year senior. Okay, yes, Indiana won by 15. They scored 82 points. That's really impressive. But not everything went well. As I just mentioned, the 2 starting guards were bad. They turned the ball over 14 times. They didn't shoot the ball well. Okay, they were 4 of 14 from 3. That's only 29%. They didn't make their free throws. They were 18 of 29. That's 62%. When your center is your best free throw shooter, that's problematic, okay? Indiana has to figure out how to shoot the basketball. Like, yes, you can get away with shooting, 29% from 3 when you're playing against Minnesota on a night where Minnesota only shot 18% from 3. Teams like Nebraska, however, a team that Indiana's going to play on Friday night, they aren't going to shoot that poorly from 3. It's not going to happen. When they play Purdue, Purdue's not going to shoot that poorly from 3. It's not going to happen. Players like Luke Goody, Mackenzie Mbako, Trey Galloway, and Miles Rice have to find a way to space the floor and knock in some threes. Or we're going to have the exact same experience with this team, this Indiana team, that we did last year. Right? Because look, you're not winning basketball games in today's day and age if you can't shoot the ball. And as of right now, the Indiana Hoosiers cannot shoot the basketball. And that is problematic. And honestly, the fact that they scored 82 points against a Big Ten team without making threes and free throws is really impressive. Like, if they can find a way to get some contributions from Miles Rice and Trey Galloway, they could be like a top 15 team. Okay, especially if Bryson Tucker continues to play as well as he did off the bench last night. I had a blast watching him play. It was awesome. I was so intrigued to see how he would respond after scoring 0 points in 16 minutes against Miami, Ohio. And last night, he played really well. He was great last night. In 20 minutes, he scored 16 points on 60% shooting, and he also grabbed 6 rebounds. And he wasn't the primary ball handler. And I think that is a very impressive thing because Bryson Tucker has probably been the best player on every team that he's ever played on. He probably had the ball in his hands all the time, and a lot of the offense was, hey, Bryson, go score or go get somebody else a shot. And then he shows up at Indiana, and Mike Woodson's like, you're going to come off the bench, and when you come off the bench, we still aren't going to give you the ball. We're going to let Miles Rice, Trey Galloway, Malik Renew, Omar Ballo, and Mackenzie Mbako touch the ball before you do. And Bryson Tucker is like, that's fine. I'll just cut to the basket and grab some rebounds. I mean, it was just a really impressive performance. I was impressed with him last night. He was smart with the ball. He only turned it over once. He cut well. He moved well without the ball. Like, it was just very impressive. And if he keeps playing like that, then he's going to have a good year. Mike Woodson's going to have to give him more minutes. And he might even have a chance of being Big Ten Freshman of the Year. But he has to keep playing like that. He has to keep moving without the ball and doing all those little things to be able to score. Because guys like Trey Galloway and Malik Renew and Mackenzie Mbako they're going to have the ball before Bryson Tucker does. Miles Rice is probably also on that list, but I don't think he should be because I don't think he's very good. Miles Rice might not be a Big Ten player. It's early. Indiana's only played 10 games. They've played 1 game in the Big Ten, but I have not been impressed with Miles Rice. I think he's incredibly loose with the ball. He lost his dribble multiple times last night. He'd be going up into a shot, and he would lose the ball. And Big Ten point guards just don't do that. Like, they just don't. Like you never see Braden Smith just lose the basketball. Okay? No way. Right? And when it comes to Miles Rice, he's very simply good against bad teams. But in 5 games against Power 4 opponents or good teams, Providence, Gonzaga, South Carolina, Louisville, and then I'm missing one, Minnesota last night. He's been bad. He's been bad in those games. In the 5 games Indiana's played against good teams, Miles Rice is averaging 7 points on 28% shooting from the floor. He's shooting 40% from 3 in those games to give him some credit. And he's also averaging 3 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 turnovers. Like, that's not very good. Your starting point guard has to be better than that if you want to win games in the Big Ten. If you want to win games in the NCAA tournament, your starting point guard has to be better than that. And there's simply no way around it. He has to be better in order for Indiana to reach their ceiling this year. Okay, he was the guy, he was the guard that was supposed to come in and make everything better for Indiana, and he has not done that so far. Okay, and he has to because it's Trey Galloway's 5th year in Bloomington, and I just don't expect him to all of a sudden become good. Okay, like Trey Galloway has been incredibly underwhelming during his time in Bloomington, and I don't expect for that to change now in year 5. Miles Rice has to be better. No way around it. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, Bo Nix or Anthony Richardson, who would you prefer to have? We'll get into that topic when we come back.
AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hopefully you're having a nice week. It is Tuesday. Thanks for tuning in. No matter how you're tuning in, that's always greatly appreciated. Anthony Richardson or Bo Nix, we're going to get to see both of them play on the field on Sunday, and I'm excited. I am. Here's the thing. Anthony Richardson and Bo Nix are polar opposites, okay? Especially when they were coming out of college. When you look at Bo Nix, you knew exactly what you were going to get. A solid NFL quarterback, and since he has an excellent head coach and a good play caller, he looks even better than what he actually is. With Anthony Richardson, however, he was an incredibly raw prospect with a ton of upside, okay? Bo Nix is the safe option. Anthony Richardson is the risky option, right? High risk, high reward is Anthony Richardson. Low risk, low reward is Bo Nix. That is who they are, and every person has their preference. Okay, Bo Nix developed a ton in college, while Anthony Richardson did not. Bo Nix was drafted based on his production, based off the fact that he'd started 61 games in his college career, while Anthony Richardson was drafted based off of his potential and his upside. Both of these players, Anthony Richardson and Bo Nix, have played 13 games or started 13 games in their NFL careers. And given their draft profiles, the starts to their careers are going as expected. Bo Nix has a better completion percentage than Anthony Richardson. He's thrown for more yards than Anthony Richardson. He's thrown more touchdown passes than Anthony Richardson, and they've both thrown 10 interceptions. Anthony Richardson, however, has been sacked less. His yards per passing attempt is higher. He's ran for more yards. He's ran for more touchdowns, and he has more game-winning drives. I am someone who's about being the best. If you aren't the best, then what's the point? Okay? I like Bo Nix. Bo Nix is a good quarterback. He's going to play in the NFL for 10 years. But he's never going to be on the same level of Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen. Like, we're never going to sit back and be like, wow, Bo Nix is one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the NFL. At his peak, he's a slightly more athletic Brock Purdy. He can win you games, but everything around him has to be set up. And the Broncos, currently, are a great situation for any quarterback. They have one of the best defenses in the NFL, only allowing 18.5 points per game. Cortland Sutton is a legitimate number 1 wide receiver. They run the ball well. They have a good offensive line. Sean Payton is an excellent offensive coach. And because of all that, and because Bo Nix is capable as a quarterback, the Broncos are probably going to make the playoffs this year. And they're probably going to beat the Colts on Sunday. But he's never going to win a Super Bowl. He's just not that level of quarterback, and he never will be. Anthony Richardson, on the other hand, as of today, he is not as good as Bo Nix. He's not. But he has the potential and the athleticism and the tools to be a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. That is not my take. That is Super Bowl champion head coach Tony Dungy's take. And we've seen Anthony Richardson develop through these 13 games. We've seen him come back better since being benched. Okay, he's completing more of the short passes. He's running the ball effectively. Okay, he's become a good player in the red zone with the ability to run, and the Colts have surrounded him with a lack of talent, and yet he is still figuring out ways to win football games. As of right now, I think that if you lined everyone up and you asked them a very simple question and you told them the goal this year is to win as many games as possible, I think everyone would take Bo Nix. And then if you said the goal is to win as many games as possible 5 years from now, I think more people would take Anthony Richardson. Okay, because Bo Nix has played 61 games in college. That's absurd. That's a record. And because of that, he's just further along in his development. So of course he's going to be better right now. Anthony Richardson started 26 games combined between his college and NFL career. He's just behind. And the hope is that at some point, either hopefully, over this last month of the season, or maybe at the start of next year, the hope is that he catches up and he figures things out And we start to see really why the Colts drafted him, because he has this significant amount of talent that guys like Bo Nix simply do not have. Okay? And I just think that we need to keep in mind the plan for Anthony Richardson. Okay? Because look, like if you followed Anthony Richardson in college, you just knew that he wasn't going to show up, put on a Colts jersey, and start churning out double-digit win seasons. It's just like it wasn't going to happen. Bo Nix, however, like that was a real possibility because he's played a ton of football. And as we watch this game on Sunday, I'm just asking you to remember these things. Bo Nix is a more developed quarterback. He's playing against a bad defense, behind a better offensive line, and throwing to the best receiver on the field on Sunday. Meanwhile, Anthony Richardson is an inexperienced quarterback, 26 starts combined between his college and NFL careers. He's playing against the second best scoring defense in the NFL on Sunday, behind an average at best offensive line with above average weapons if Josh Downs plays. If Josh Downs doesn't play, then it's average city over here in Indy. Bo Nix should and probably will outplay Anthony Richardson on Sunday. But that may not always be the case. And that is why the Colts took him. The Colts took Anthony Richardson. And honestly, like I said, I don't mind it. I like the risk of taking a guy who, if he develops and if he becomes the player that everyone thinks that he's capable of being, like that's a guy who can put you on his back and go win games. Like that's just not who Bo Nix is. And so sure, here in the short term, Bo Nix is probably the better investment, which is perfect for the Broncos, right? Because the Broncos have a good roster and they've got Sean Payton and they want to win right now. Perfect for the Broncos. Meanwhile, Anthony Richardson's probably better suited for a team like the Colts, a team that doesn't have a very good roster, a team that's in the process of still rebuilding, even though you'd think that they'd be done by now, considering that Chris Ballard's been here for 8 years. So when you watch this game on Sunday and you watch Bo Nix outplay Anthony Richardson, just know that there's a chance that this won't always be the case. That's going to do it here at the Real Jonathan Smith Show. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to tune in and to listen. The Dan Dockett Show is coming your way starting here at noon. Should be an absolute blast because the Dan Dockett Show is always a blast. I'll be back on the air tomorrow from 10 to noon. Set your clocks and get ready because I got a great show coming your way again tomorrow. But first, the Dan Dockett Show is locked and loaded here on Indy Sports Ticket, and that show's coming your way here in about 5 minutes.